Our next reading is a poem by Liesel Mueller. This is a poem titled, When I Am Asked. When I am asked how I began writing poems, I talk about the indifference of nature. It was soon after my mother died, a brilliant June day, everything blooming. I sat on a gray stone bench in a lovingly planted garden, but the daylilies were as deaf as the ears of drunken sleepers, and the roses curved inward. Nothing was black or broken, and not a leaf fell. And the sun blared endless commercials for summer holidays. I sat on a stone bench ringed with the ingenue faces of pink and white impatiens, and placed my grief in the mouth of language, the only thing that would grieve with me. Like Amy said, we have been going through a lot these 40 days. It's fascinating that, at least in biblical times, 40 days is that period that always marks something hard, something that was long enough to really change things. It's said that the great flood lasted 40 days and 40 nights, and that Moses was 40 days and 40 nights talking to God on Mount Sinai. And likewise, Jesus spends 40 days and 40 nights in the desert. So 40 days and 40 nights into this COVID-19 pandemic, we all have gone through the full range of emotions. At first, a little giddy to maybe have more time to ourselves, a chance to clean out the basement or go through some closets. Those first few Zoom meetings where it felt like you were right there with family members or friends. Those first days when it still felt okay to kind of congregate loosely outside your house in somebody's yard or just on the sidewalk. There was not the fear of other people that I now see in all of us. Those first days, it seemed like this was something that was unwelcome but would not disrupt us too much. We would surely get through it, and we would be cheerful, and we would go on, and if we were lucky, we wouldn't know anyone who had died of it. It was easy, as spring was coming on, to think, we can handle this just fine. I'm not going to break down. I'm not going to lose my mind. But 40 days in, I think all of us are losing it a little bit. I certainly know I am. I'm not sleeping as well as I usually do. My mind races. Sometimes I can't get to sleep, and sometimes I'm woken up at 2 o'clock in the morning or 4 o'clock in the morning. And there's nothing to do but to rise and to start the day. And then I want to nap around 10 a.m. I know that so many of us are lonely, especially those of us who live alone. It's hard not to be in other people's physical presence. And even folks who have other people in their households, it can get a little wearing to talk to just those people over and over. And I know that we've probably seen other family members and children go through a full range of emotions and a full range of behaviors as we've adjusted to this. And this morning, I want to name what we're going through because it has a name. It's called grief. Each of us is grieving this morning. Even those of us who are holding it all together, even those of us who have been through some grief and have found a way out of it, have found a different way to be, a more resilient way to be. I give thanks for those people. But each of us is grieving. whether we're adults or children, we are grieving both things that were and things that never will be. Some of us are grieving that we won't get to finish our school year, especially anybody who is going to graduate, the seniors or anybody graduating from college. We are grieving that signpost, that mile marker in our lives. Some of us are grieving terribly that we cannot see either children or grandchildren, even though they may live nearby, and we can't be physically with them. Some of us are grieving the loss of our jobs or the decline in our business or our business having to shut. Some of us are grieving that we have, in fact, too much work to do at this time and too many people dependent on us and not enough time for ourselves to just be and to cope with this. And some of us are grieving people who have died. We're grieving loved ones or friends of friends. At First Parish in Concord, we've already lost at least a couple of people in our congregation to COVID-19, and others have been ill with it. Some are still ill, and some are recovering. We won't know until this is over how much loss we have suffered. And that's the other thing about this grief, is it doesn't seem like it's going to be over soon. So I want to be the first to tell you that I have good days and I have bad days. I have good hours during a day and I have bad hours during a day. There are times when I think I'm really courageous and I'm really lucky and that I'm really resilient and can be there for people. And there are times when I don't know how I'm going to make it through the next day. And my guess is that the same is for you. But the thing that I do know is that the main job of religion, the main job of community, the main job of church or synagogue or temple is to help us make sense of what we're going through, is to rebind us to what is actually happening and to put it in a context that helps us, at least for a little bit, understand it. Because it'll change, it'll keep changing. Each time it will be different. But what we are going through is so human. It's as old as those Jewish people who first had to flee from Egypt and then had to escape from Babylon. And the way that they did it, the way that all people who are drawn into something that they didn't ask for, that they didn't want, the way that they did it was they remembered how things were. They remembered that it was okay to be mad about the way that things were not anymore. And most important, it was important for them to lament, to grieve, to say openly the things that they had lost. Because whether they were traveling out of ancient Iraq, or whether it was African Americans who'd been stolen from their homes and brought to a new land, it was worthy of grief, the old life that was lost. And it was through grieving that they could then face the future. So I invite you this week or whenever it hits you to grieve as you need to. I want to use the last line of Liesl Mueller's poem again, and I'll also post it in the chat. She says, "I sat on a gray stone bench, ringed with the ingenue faces of pink and white impatience, and placed my grief in the mouth of language, the only thing that would grieve with me." I encourage you to put your grief in the mouth of language, and that by doing so, know that you are connected to me and to everyone in this congregation. You are loved and you are held. You will get through this. It will not be easy. And it is right to grieve what we have lost. As we hear a piece of music, I invite you to write into the chat in about 5 words or less. Tell us, what are you grieving now? What are you grieving now? And be sure to put your setting on all panelists and attendees or everyone so that we can see your responses, and then I will read a few of them. What are you grieving now? There are almost 80 responses in the chat, so I'll just read a few of them so we can get a sense of what they are, and then you can go back through the chat and read them on your own. People are grieving the closing of school, grieving friends, the ability to hug my loved ones, hugs and human contact, grandchildren, loss of the old way of life, the loss of Ferry Beach, not playing sports, a loss of certainty, grieving my life separate from my work, grieving a dinner party surrounded by friends, regular human interaction, all of you in person and community, grieving not being able to travel and see my mom, singing together in person. I grieve the loss of touch, missing mingling with others, the excitement of seeing friends and family at a wedding, social nearness, being able to hold and hug my grandchildren, hugs, lots of hugs, missing family, missing and grieving the casual nature of our old lives, grieving, not knowing when I can see my grandchildren again, grieving for the people without health care, grieving for the uncertainty of the future, grieving freedom and ease, the familiar. So much grief and so shared. Thank you for sharing in the chat.